Mentoring for Onboarding, Cutting Costs and Improving Productivity. This webinar is the second of a series of complimentary webinars where we'll be showing you the many ways that mentoring can enhance your talent management and organizational development strategy. Now, to those of you who are our last webinar, thank you so much for joining us again, and we hope you enjoyed the presentation. I'm Crystal Ding, the Marketing and Research Analyst at Insala, and I'm bringing this webinar to you along with my colleague Judy Corner, Director of Consulting Services, and Christina Koch, Vice President of Client Solutions. Now, today, Judy is going to be talking with you on using mentoring to drive results for your onboarding program. Over the past 20 years, Judy's designed and delivered mentoring workshops, mentor-mentee training, and an original mentoring process called high-impact mentoring that she's successfully implemented at a wide range of organizations. Today, she's going to share with you some challenges and success stories experienced by some of her clients and give you some food for thought on how you might be able to generate your own mentoring for onboarding success stories. Now, before we move on to our presentation, let me just explain to you some of the guidelines for today's webinar. First, you'll be muted during the presentation for optimal audio performance. During the presentation, there will be a few times when we'll invite you to participate in a couple of different ways. First, by submitting comments into the questions panel, which is located at the bottom of your GoToWebinar panel. And second, by raising your hand, which you can do by clicking the green hand raise icon in the top left corner of your panel. We have disabled this for now as this is a large public webinar, but we will enable it when the time comes. Now, if you have any questions for us during the presentation, then please type them in the questions window at the lower portion of the GoToMeeting toolbar. Also, my colleague Christina Koch will be addressing questions on audio, visual, and any other technical issues if you do happen to experience any of these problems. At a break, Judy will address your questions that you've submitted throughout the presentation. Feel free to submit additional questions at this time. And finally, after today's presentation, you will receive a recording of the webinar. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Judy, who's going to tell you a little more about why we're so sold on mentoring for onboarding. Judy?
Thank you very much, Crystal. And what we want to do today is, again, as you mentioned, welcome everybody back to our mentoring webinar series. As Crystal mentioned, our first one was regarding how to implement a successful mentoring program. And for those of you who were not able to make our first webinar, we will be giving you some information at the end of our broadcast where you can actually get a recording of that webinar and be able to view it. Today we're going to talk about how mentoring supports your onboarding process and how it helps you to cut costs and increase productivity. We have another webinar that's going to be coming out the end of September, on September 29th, and it is going to talk about aligning diversity and your bottom line results by using mentoring again, for mentoring for diversity and inclusion. These are the ones that we have planned. We also have future webinars that are going to be coming up, and we invite you to tell us the kinds of things that you would like to have discussed during these webinars. We've already gotten some suggestions from previous participants, and we're looking at topics like how technology supports your mentoring initiative. In addition to that, how you use mentoring for leadership development, how you use mentoring to actually support coaching. So these are some suggestions that we have gotten from participants previously, and we welcome your suggestions to email us at info@insala.com and submit your suggestions for webinars that would be interesting for you around the topic of mentoring. The kind of things that you're going to learn today is, first of all, how a well-structured and well-planned mentoring program can really help with some of those onboarding challenges, such as improving your time to productivity and measuring your results. And the one thing that all new hires go through in the onboarding program is preventing information inconsistency and overload. We all go through the overload piece, and then sometimes when we get started on the job, we get inconsistent information in doing that. And then we're going to talk about things around adjusting new employees to a new organizational culture, or it could be the same organization but just a different culture. We're going to talk about some real onboarding challenges that have been faced by our clients, and then how our process and technology has empowered them to address these types of challenges, and we'll help you to do the same. Insala is a leading global provider of talent management, mentoring, career development, and career transition solutions. We use the word solution many times because we look at it from a total standpoint. For more information, we welcome you to visit our website, and also the fact that we have a dedicated website called mentoringtalent.com or employmenttalent.com, which are our specialized websites to help you, whether it's in career transition or mentoring. As I mentioned before, the thing that we do is that we really offer total solutions. We have consulting services to help you to ensure that your process is in place. We have supporting technology, content and research, program implementation, and again, we look at this from a total solution standpoint. We want our clients to go from a successful process to a successful management. The kind of things that we feel make us different is, first of all, our mentoring methodology specifically has over 20 years of applied experience. We have implemented our mentoring methodology in organizations as small as 250 and as large as 37,000 throughout the world. And in doing so, we know it works. It's had practical application. Organizations have used it. They've provided suggestions. We've done quality updates. But again, we know it works. And in addition to that, then, Insala has 15 years of talent management software solutions that they can bring to making a proven mentoring methodology absolutely successful for an organization. We have dedicated subject matter experts in our areas of mentoring and talent management. And as I mentioned to you before, we have our website. So we feel like we really provide exceptional solutions that really are sustainable and scalable for our clients and for your talent needs as you move forward. These are some of the kind of things that we do in that sustainable and scalable solution. We look at career transition, we look at performance management, succession management, career development, employee assessments and development, and then of course today as we are going to concentrate on mentoring as we move forward. One of the things that we want to talk about is the fact that whether your onboarding program covers an hour, a day, a month, or 3 months, there really are some very specific pieces to it, and how long they last is dependent on the organization and how long their onboarding program is. But the first thing that happens is we offer in a new hire, as they come into the organization, we offer them information about the organization. They go through an organization orientation to find out this is what our organization is about, this is our history, this is what has made us who we are. So I'm finding out about this organization overall. The next thing that happens as a new hire is I go through some kind of a personnel orientation. And this is where I find out information about benefits. This is where I'm filling out all my forms. And this is where I find out very specific information that the organization has to have from a personnel standpoint. Then normally the next thing that happens is I am introduced to my department or division and then specifically to my job. Again, how much time is spent in each of these pieces is up to the organization and the extensiveness of your onboarding program. But again, we have found that whether your onboarding is for a day or a month or 3 months or however long it happens, these are the 4 kinds of things that normally are a part of going into that onboarding program. One of the things that we'd like to do right now is to stop and allow you the opportunity to go and add into the chat area the ability to tell us what your biggest onboarding challenge is. So we're going to take a couple of minutes and let you type in your biggest onboarding challenges.
And if you think back, these can be challenges for either when you were a new hire and going through this process and finding that things were inefficient or not done quite as well as you'd hoped, or they could be on the administration and management side where you look from the top down and realize that a lot of your onboarding processes could be done better. I'm going to take a few moments to see these questions. We're looking at great questions here. And actually, the interesting thing is, and it might not be surprising to hear, that a lot of these questions have a lot in common. There are definite issues that are quite in common for everyone in this audience, and probably that's representative of a lot of people in your position. So just keep typing your questions in. Feel free, go for it. But I'm just going to highlight a few of them as we go down. For example, how do you onboard people with no previous work experience? What do you do with them? How do you establish a process-oriented mentoring, or sorry, onboarding program for organizations that may be growing and may just be beginning a regimented onboarding program at the moment, don't know where to start? How do we improve new employee orientation and make it more exciting? How do we integrate all the information so that people aren't overloaded when they first come into the organization? That's actually a big problem that several of you have indicated, information overload. And another problem that you guys indicated was getting people to understand the organizational culture. And another problem that we have is managers having time to onboard their new hires. And yeah, I'll let you go ahead, Judy, because there's quite a few good questions that people have submitted.
Great. Okay. And, you know, actually we're going to cover some of those. As I was hearing you go through some of those, we're actually going to give you some challenges that our clients have faced and what they did and go. So we hope this will give you some good tips as you're moving forward. The first challenge that we want to cover and to talk about is improving that time to productivity and being able to measure results. One of the things that has happened with this one client that we worked with is it was taking them too long to get people up from the time they came in the door to get them up to what we call productivity, to where, you know, there wasn't the large amount of hand-holding as we went through it. And so what we really wanted to find out was, you know, how are we going to shorten that learning curve, get them up to speed faster, and be able to measure how that happened. So, you know, their challenge was, you know, faster learning curve. It was around actually 3 particular positions that were highly specialized in doing that. And so they wanted to, again, they wanted to increase that learning curve, but still make sure that they were able to keep the skill productivity requirements. And we don't want to shortcut the development that we're giving these individuals. We just need to see how we can accelerate that as we move forward. So one of the first things that they did was they ran a skill competency assessment as people were coming into these positions to find out where their benchmark was and to be able to do that and making sure that they kind of had that information up front in being able to do that. Then what they did is they chose mentors and qualified those mentors using specific criteria that they found were going to be in these mentees' areas of need. So the point is, and I know that all of you have seen this, that you will have a large group of individuals that come into a particular position or in the organization, and they each come in at different levels of expertise. So, and what you might find is, just as an example, let's say that there are 10 skills that this individual needs for this particular job. Some individuals have the skills of A, B, and C, and that's their area of expertise. So you don't want to spend as much time with them, but they need help in 3 others. So the point was, what they did was they began to then match the mentee and this new hire with a mentor that could help them in their specific area of expertise. So it wasn't like everybody had to go through all of the orientation, all of the training. They could be very selective in what they needed to go through and what they needed to be able to do in doing that. The result was this organization was able to reduce this time to productivity in their onboarding program from 13 weeks to 6 weeks. That's a 57% improvement in productivity. Imagine what that's worth to your organization to get people up and running faster. And very specifically, it was supported by mentoring and being able to do that. So some of the ways that we see that we can help you in being able to do that with our technology is, first of all, being able to look at and manage those competencies through skill competency assessment and find out those types of things that are the areas of need for a specific new hire as they come into the organization. And then what you're going to do is to make sure you get your employees into a learning plan, get them into some very specific activities, and again, it's their learning plan. Many times what happens that is that big difference in an onboarding program is stopping to think about the fact, is it your learning plan for them, or is it their learning plan based on what they need? And in this situation, that's what the client found out, was they were concentrating on kind of giving everybody the same level of learning when what they really needed to do was to target that very specifically for the individual as they were coming in. And they were able to go through and still make sure that the kind of goals and objectives and learning that the individual was looking at still was going to make sure that it hit the goals and objectives and all of the things that they wanted to be able to make sure that this individual learned through very specific standard reports in looking at the goals and objectives that were set, what the progress was towards those goals, the time that were spent in various activities, and being able to look at how close they were getting. So they knew that, is this really working? Because they were able to look and say, aha, by targeting these learning plans and by helping individuals really focus on their own area of need, we could actually look at what progress was being made. We knew they were going to be on target, and if we had a situation where it wasn't, we knew what we had to do. We could be able to track specifically what they were doing, and again, based on that, looking at what the savings were for each individual. Cutting this learning curve from 13 weeks to 6.5 is absolutely incredible in being able to do this. So again, not only was the organization able to look at this and track it from their standpoint, but the employee is able to track their own progress. So if they find they are falling behind in a little, in some ways, they can quickly get up to speed and still meet the organization's deadlines of trying to keep that to 6.5 weeks or with 6 weeks without having to look at pressure for them. The other thing that I heard coming up, and again, we've talked about this many, many times, anybody who's ever gone through a extensive onboarding program goes through what we call information overload. At the end of the onboarding program, what begins to happen is sometimes you come out at the end of the day or the week or whatever, you've got a headache. There is so much information that the individual needs. And then you also want to be careful that as the new hire leaves your onboarding program, that they're getting the same information they got during the program. So the challenge that this particular client had was their new hires were receiving too much information. And the other thing that was happening, and they found, is that the new hires, when they then got on the job, they might be asking 2 or 3 different people a question because they weren't retaining everything they got during the onboarding program and all of that information. And what they were finding is they were getting different types of answers. So they were getting some inconsistent information in what they were doing. And we all know how that happens. You get into a new job, you got your head down, you're moving forward, and you know, you got a question, so you ask the person next to you. And the person next to you may not be the exact person to be able to ask. So again, part of the challenge for the individual is I'm getting too much information, I'm getting inconsistent information on an ongoing basis, and the company then, their issue was, okay, how do we make sure they get this crucial information that they've got to have, and yet we don't overwhelm them in doing this. So what they were able to do is the client very specifically qualified mentors and made sure that these mentors had the exact information needed. But most of all, what they did was they made sure that these mentors were the types of individuals had the skills to get that first impression of the organization. Your onboarding program and some of the first people that your new hires meet in your onboarding program will give them the first impression about your company. Everyone who's ever gone through any kind of recruitment or hiring has seen this. They've been told this. It's been ingrained in them. We must give our applicants a good impression of our organization. So if they've gotten that through the recruitment and the application process, you want to make sure that continues. So you want to make sure that the individuals who are their mentors are also those individuals who are the best fit and also will give them the best first impression of the organization. The qualification criteria for these mentors made sure that they had very specific information. Again, it's information that the organization wanted to make sure was important for the new hire to have, and in addition to that, that would make sure it was consistent throughout their journey into their new job. And what we also asked them to do, and we worked with them, is to be patient and have that quality, because it's okay if the new hire and the mentee ask the same question over and over again. We all learn and retain information at different rates and different levels. So what they did was that each new hire was actually assigned 2 different mentors. One of the mentors was actually to help this individual with what we call kind of the organizational onboarding piece. And what they were able to do is make sure that those overall questions about the organization, the kind of the bigger picture around the organization, that mentor could answer those questions for the individual. And then they had another mentor that was much more job specific. So that again, what we were having was someone was coming and working with the new hire, making sure they got the same answers and consistent information throughout, every time that they ask a question. And then again, the purpose of the partnership was information sharing. But again, it was making sure that these new hires took this information they got on onboarding and made sure that all of this information they got ahead of time and throughout their new hire experience was consistent in doing that. The results were the fact that one of the latest surveys that the organization took indicated a significant reduction in the new hire frustration. This was a real problem for them, and a increased satisfaction with the onboarding program. It also showed higher levels of understanding and assimilation, because people didn't just get it once, but they got it with reinforced learning from their mentors as they went through that. And probably one of the best things that happened was the number of the complaints from the managers decreased significantly, because the managers were coming back and saying, I'm not sure this onboarding program is working, because they keep coming back to us with the same questions over and over again. Did they get it? So that was decreased. And then for those of you who have any HR functions in doing that, there was a reduction in follow-up phone calls and visits to your offices and those types of things that the new hire would ask. So again, these were very specific results that this client was able to get. And the way technology can really help you in doing that is, first of all, being able to qualify your new hires and your mentors. Having an application process that really finds out the skills and the qualities of your mentors and their focus and level of commitment to even being a mentor. And when we talk about a mentor, we talk about someone with specific knowledge or experience in a given area that's willing and able to mentor others. And the willing part is the commitment that you need to find out through an application process ahead of time. And the able is that they have the skill to be a good mentor in what they're doing. And then what is their area of expertise that they actually can help a new hire or a mentee on. The other thing that we found was that your technology allows you to actually be able to manage multiple mentoring programs. So the one for your new hires, if you have a new hire that's going into the marketing area, you can have a set of mentors that can help individuals in the marketing area. You might have another program for your new hires that are going into finance. You can have another program and separate mentors that can focus in that area. So again, you can actually, through technology, be able to run multiple programs at a time and be able to match and pair your new hires with mentors that can give them the types of information they need based on very specific criteria that is specific to that new hire and that mentee. And then what you're going to be able to do is make sure that the information that the new hire gets in their orientation program, that they've got other places they can go and get the same information. So they're getting it in onboarding. They're getting it in making sure that their mentors, when they ask them questions, are giving it to them. And then if you have a communication portal that you can provide to your mentees then what you can do is to provide announcements or information that, again, is consistent to allow the individual to get consistent information throughout whatever they're doing in their new hire orientation and the new hire onboarding. So the other thing that you're able to do is to make sure that your mentee and your new hire is communicating with other individuals that can help them specifically, and that they're not going off and asking a lot of different people a lot of different questions. When we went through this with this particular client, they were pretty adamant about doing this because most of the individuals that were involved in this particular program, what they had experienced was the fact that they were actually going through, and they had experienced this. They had experienced getting very inconsistent information, and they had gone through the overload. So again, when they implemented the program, they wanted to do something for others in doing that. Another way that we have seen mentoring, and I heard this come up also in some of the challenges, is adjusting people to a new company culture in doing this. With this particular organization, one of the things that they had is they had several mergers. And one of the specific problems that came up right away after one of the mergers was bringing new employees from an area that was a very specific urban, sophisticated New York City into a very small town in Connecticut. So moving these individuals in doing this is kind of like their challenge is, how do we do this and do it effectively and not have people so unhappy they're kind of walking out because it's like, ooh, this is really, really different. So in this particular situation, we know every company has its culture. This happened to be a situation where it was individuals coming from another company into a new company culture. It was also individuals that had been a part of the same company but a very different division of the company and were also coming to this. This organization, again, looked at mentors and qualified them very specifically in areas that would affect these new employees coming on board. What they did was we educated and trained them on how to support these new employees that were coming in after the merger, so that they didn't feel like they were being too absorbed, but they really were, or excuse me, that they feel like they were absorbing into a culture and they didn't feel like they were kind of a we and they kind of situation. And if any of you have ever worked in a situation where you have just taken on a new acquisition or a new business, it does many times get to be a we and they. So again, educating the mentors on how to support these employees after this merger. And then, what they talked about was, very specific time commitments that they could go and they could do. This was not going to be a lifetime commitment for the mentors. We wanted them to do this for a very specific period of time. Each new employee got a new mentor for their specific needs. But one of the things that this organization did that was absolutely great, they looked at the employee that was coming in as the new hire, but they took it a step further. They supplied mentors to individual members of the family to help the employee's family. So the employee, when they started their new position and they became a part of this new organization, they didn't have to worry about how the rest of their family was adjusting to all of this. They actually had mentors. Perfect example. They actually had worked with teenagers that were a part of the part of the community. They were a part of this mentoring experience. And what it did for a new employee coming into the organization, if they had kids, teenagers, whatever it was, these teenagers had a connection so that when they started at a new school, they knew at least somebody. And they had someone that could help them. And we all know that many times when someone moves to a new area, to a new company, makes a big change, many times it's the family that's making the biggest adjustments in what's going on here. So this organization really took it that step farther and helped not only the new hire, but what they did was they helped the new hire's family. What they got was that 84% of the new employees were satisfied with their experience, and the families actually sent letters in to the company expressing how much they appreciated the types of things that the organization was doing to help the entire family adjust better. And again, what it also did was to help these new employees get up to speed better. Some of the ways in which very specifically technology can handle this is, again, making sure that everybody understands what mentoring is and the role of the mentor. And they actually, as the new hire was even thinking about making this transition, they had information online which talked about what their mentor would be, and they actually had some examples as to what that would look like. And then what we had, again, making sure that you had these qualified mentors, that they were willing and able, so that commitment level and very specific able, they had the skills to be a good mentor and all of those qualities that were needed. What we also did was we provided some psychometric assessments for the employees to be able to go through and do some self-reflection and be engaged in the process before they actually even got there. And then what they were also able to do was to fill out a profile and introduce themselves to their new mentor ahead of time, as well as looking at a profile of their mentor. So again, they might see that even though they were new, they and their mentor, they might have had some similar experiences that would give them a connection right away. Again, it makes those icebreakers a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster. So again, what they did was pairing them with not just a mentor, but the best mentor based on specific criteria and needs that the mentee had, and then going through and allowing them, these new hires, to connect with other new hires, but current employees that could help understand. So what they did was they actually set up a database of new individuals who were fairly new employees, so that they could actually talk with them, they could converse with them, a message center, and what they were able to do is to actually, again, find out, you know, hey, I understand what you're going through, been there in doing that. So they had a portal and a communication portal and a connection. So these are three of the onboarding challenges that we have seen, very common to clients that we have worked with. Sounds like it's common to you. So improving productivity and that time, you know, time from onboarding to getting them up to speed, making sure there is not information overload, and also making sure that the new hires are getting consistent information, and then adjusting new employees to the company culture. So Crystal, at this time, can we kind of do a hand raise and find out how many individuals kind of have actually gone through and had these types of challenges with their.
Yeah, sure, Judy. We're just going to take a few seconds and have a hand raise. So if you have experienced any of these three challenges or something related to that previously in your onboarding program, either as a participant, as a new hire, or in the management and administration of your program, please raise your hand. It's going to take a few moments. There are quite a few hand raises coming in. And it looks like at least a third of you have really experienced exactly these challenges, if not challenges related to them.
Okay, that's great. And because
more
like I
still
said,
coming
we
in.
have found that more still coming in. That's great. All right, we'll kind of do a recap at the end and see how it's coming in and doing that in moving forward. Okay, to keep on going, some of the things that you might want to look at to talk about, how can I deliver a mentoring program that's going to support my onboarding program and doing this? And there's a couple things that we feel like we can help you with in being able to do this. First of all, one of the things that we have is we have a workshop called MORE, which stands for Mentoring, Organizational Readiness, and Effectiveness. And what this really allows you to do, if you don't have a mentoring initiative in place right now and are looking to put one in place, or you're looking to put one in place to support your onboarding process, what we do in this workshop is to really look at how are you going to measure your results, how are you going to be sure that you tie this mentoring initiative to objectives and organizational objectives, what do you perceive as some of the advantages and challenges you're going to have, and how are you going to meet those challenges as you move forward? What are those things from a checklist standpoint that you want to make sure you've got in place to ensure the success of your mentoring initiative overall, and specifically your mentoring initiative around your onboarding process. We do have our high-impact mentoring process that we roll out to organizations, specifically software. We can come in and we can certify your mentors. Many times what we talk about is making sure that you've got good, qualified, quality mentors. And so we do offer a certification program for mentors. We provide training for mentors, mentees, and supervisors. One of the things that we find is it's very important for managers and supervisors of individuals who are going to be a part of a mentoring initiative, whether it's mentoring overall for any of their focus specifically around your onboarding piece, is going to be that they need to understand what their role is and how to support this process. And what we also can do is that we can come in and we can help you evaluate the mentoring initiative that you may have in place and specifically evaluate how that can then be a issue or a element to support your onboarding program. To learn more about this, we invite you again to go to our mentoring website at mentoringtalent.com in doing this. But these are some of the ways that we might be able to help you. And looking at this also from a process standpoint, when you're rolling out any kind of initiative and doing this, but very specifically when you're looking at this, we suggest you look at it in phases, that you plan your objectives, how you're going to measure it, how you tie it to business objectives, that you look at how you're going to implement, how you're going to train it. Will everybody understand what their role is and what they're doing? You need to make sure you've got evaluations that are a part of it to make sure that it is going back and meeting your objectives. And then what you need to do is make sure you've got a way to manage all of the elements of it and manage your results as you are moving forward. The benefit of having an onboarding program and specifically mentoring to support that onboarding program is we've talked about before, is making sure your new hires learn accurate and consistent information from the very first day. And what it does in having a mentor is give them a safe environment that they feel like they can ask questions and discuss issues. And there isn't anything that's going to sound stupid or if I ask it 2 or 3 times to be able to do that. It gives them a network from the very first day of valuable contacts that is going to be ongoing for them in their career, not just today, but ongoing. And probably one of the nicest things is getting very individualized attention, which brands your organization as one that really cares. The other thing is that it builds job skills and that confidence quickly, a lot of times because of the individualized attention, having that safe environment and having that network is what they can do. From an OD standpoint, from an OD standpoint, those of you that are there, the benefits that you get is, again, that consistent messaging throughout the organization. You're able to track some of your partnerships to know what's going on and know that they're helping the organization meet their objectives. And that helps you to then look at how to measure your return on investment on your onboarding program. Then you're able to, look at learning plans and, again, make sure that those are customized and a part of your organizational business plan. The benefits of the organization overall, definitely that consistency and communication. Everybody gets that. Knowing that the onboarding program is a part of your strategic objectives. It's not just a warm, fuzzy, soft part of your training process. And then make sure that your onboarding program is successful and efficient and effective. Mentoring definitely supports and makes sure that happens. And what we've talked about all along is all the ways that it can cut costs and improve productivity by reducing the time and employee turnover. Because if you can reduce your employee turnover because of all the reasons we've talked about before, the frustration, too much information overload, inconsistent overload, not feeling like you're becoming a part of the organizational culture, all of those things, you can reduce your employee turnover. And then, as we've talked about before, your optimal branding of your organization, that it becomes one of those organizations that people want to work with. The next steps that we suggest you take as you are going through this is, number one, learn more about the benefits of mentoring for your onboarding. We have information that we can send to you. We have information on our mentoringtalent.com website that we welcome you to come and look at. We suggest you evaluate your mentoring program and see what mentoring can do to accomplish your organization's onboarding program. And we can also help you in doing that. Then you want to think about, is your organization ready for mentoring? And we can also support you and help you in that. We can support you in putting a plan together for your readiness and looking at the fact, is this the right time? What we'd like from you specifically right now is we are putting together a survey, and we would like for you to go to our mentoringtalent.com website and complete our survey, which will help us to find out how organizations today are using mentoring, how specific components that organizations that are using mentoring feel contribute to success of that program, and then what extent technology plays. These are the types of questions that we're going to ask you. If you don't have a mentoring program on board at the time, what we're also going to do is to take you in kind of a different area of questioning. But what you'll be able to do is to receive a complimentary survey when results of the survey when it is published in September in going forward. Again, what we want to do is to invite you to our next webinar, which will be in September of this year, and it's on mentoring diversity. And again, what we'd like for you to do is to ask or tell us what you would like to have as topics to be discussed around the topic of mentoring as we move forward. In addition to that, if you would like a copy of the webinar that we did, webinar number 1 we did in June, how to implement a successful mentoring program, please email us at info@insala.com, and we'll be glad to send that to you. So at this time, we'd like to address some of the questions that have come up. Crystal?
Yeah, thanks, Judy. That was great. And we really have a lot of great questions. So what I'm going to do is look through this list of questions and go through just what people have asked about specifically the challenges that we've been given today, as well as questions on how to implement a mentoring process and how to coordinate that with an onboarding program.
Okay, one of the things I'd like to insert at this time is because mentoring is such a hot topic at the moment, and because we get so many questions during these webinars, what we also will do is if we don't have a chance to answer your question during the webinar, we will email if you will let us know your email address, we will email an answer to you specifically. So we want to make sure that we address all the questions, but in these webinars, we've been getting a lot of them, an overabundance of questions. So go ahead, Crystal.
Sure. One particular question we had concerned the second challenge with information overload and consistency. And one attendee has asked, should the mentor belong to the same department as the new hire when it comes to finding a mentor for organizational focus, or is it better to find a mentor from another department?
I suggest you find, for the organizational focus, I suggest you find a mentor from another part of the organization. It's kind of what we call cross-functional mentoring, and it really gives the new hire and the mentee a bigger, broader view of the organization than if they're only going to focus on their own area. They're going to have a mentor that is going to be specifically from their division or department that has to do in focusing on their job. So if you can provide that organizational mentor as someone from another part of the organization, that's absolutely great.
Great. Thanks, Judy. Another question that came in was how can we ensure in the HR department that other departments and teams with new employees coming on board onto their teams, that they organize formal introductions to the teams and on the job? Is it necessary to have formal introductions, or is it okay to have informal ones in the onboarding process?
Not quite sure I'm real clear on the question, but I'll answer it based on the interpretation. There is nothing better for an organizational culture overall than getting to know as many people as you can in the organization, and especially as a new hire. It makes you feel much more welcome. So having some type of an activity that allows all the new hires from different areas of the organization to get together, it becomes a little bit like a fraternity or sorority in what you're doing. So I would say that if there's some way that you can get all parts of your organization to bring together your new hires, if you're spread out all over the United States, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Through video conferencing, through webinars like we're doing right now. Don't always assume it has to be face-to-face. You can have lots of ways in which you can make good connections. But giving a new hire a broader scope of being able to meet people throughout the organization just makes them feel more welcome. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thanks, Judy. And another question that came was, for a very decentralized institution that's spread out all over the place, what's the best way to ensure everyone is getting the best onboarding and consistent onboarding as well?
Mentoring. And that is making sure that's the best way that we feel to do that, and making sure that your mentors are qualified and not just allowing anybody to be a mentor, but make sure that your mentors are qualified and the information not only that you are giving out through your onboarding process is consistent, but making sure that the information that the mentors are supplying to the individual new hires or mentees is consistent. We keep using this word qualified mentors, and I can't tell you how important it is. We believe the success of any mentoring initiative is very, very, very highly dependent on the quality of your mentors. And so that becomes one of the biggest criteria, is making sure your mentors are qualified, they have all of the information that you want them to have as you move forward. So it's consistent in your initial onboarding information, and it's the consistency of what your mentors are telling the mentees, that's consistent throughout your organization. Even more important when you're spread out all over. And I think we've got time for maybe one more question.
Judy, actually, it looks like we have quite a bit of time because this webinar is running for another 12 minutes, unless my clock is wrong, which I very well may be.
I'm
but
sorry,
we do
I thought we were cutting off at I apologize. So keep going.
Okay. Well, let's see. We'll go through as many of these as possible. But we do have a lot of questions, Judy. So I'm just gonna present them to you. First of all, someone was curious as to what makes an organization actually unready for mentoring. And in terms of mentoring readiness, what do you mean by that?
That's a great question. It really is. I would say that if your organization is not ready to tie your mentoring initiative, if they're not ready to take it seriously, if they're not ready to have a planned approach in rolling it out, if they aren't ready to look at it as a business strategy, they're not ready to tie it to specific business objectives, and they're not ready to look at it from a measurement standpoint, they're probably not ready. Because one of the things we talk about is that mentoring is a business strategy. It is no longer a warm, fuzzy, feel-good program. So one of the first things, if you hear and you bring up to someone in your organization who is talking about this, and you just ask them the questions, well, how would this support our business objectives? And you get an answer like, well, I don't see that it would even be necessary to do that, or I don't see it would support the business objectives, you're not ready. If you're not ready to put some resources to it from having a planned approach, from what we talked about before, which was plan, implement, evaluate, and manage, and really put it and roll it out in a process format, you probably aren't ready.
Thanks very much, Judy, for that. And what do you train your mentors on for certification? When you conduct your mentor certification process, what is the guideline behind that? What exactly do you do?
One of the things that we do when we do normal mentor training inside an organization, we just come in, we do some things around, making sure they understand how to be a good mentor and those types of things. When we do a mentor certification process, we take the mentors through some very specific assessments ahead of time. We want to make sure that they have gone through some psychometric assessments. We want to make sure that they go through some skills and competency assessments, and really some deep assessments to make sure that they have the skills to be a good mentor in doing that. And in addition to that, we take them through some very specific training around coaching, how to coach their mentor, very specific around multiple types of areas they may come across, and having to do with what do you do if the relationship isn't working, communication processes around that, all of those types of things. So the training process is, there's an assessment process that's much more extensive up front, and the training process that follows that is much more extensive, and then there is a follow-up coaching and evaluation process after that. So it's kind of a three-step process: assessments, the training, and then the ongoing coaching and evaluation.
Great, thanks, Judy. How then, when it comes to new employee orientation and right after the employee is hired and welcomed to the organization, how does technology and having that communication portal really help them get on board quickly?
One of the best ways is that we're all used to communicating via technology. We've gotten used to it with LinkedIn and all of those types of things that we have, the social networking portion. And so, first of all, it becomes comfortable. I've got that portal that I actually can communicate with my mentor, with other mentees, with other individuals in the organization. And one of the things that we find that this also helps is in some ways by using the communication process from technology, specifically for the new hire, they're able to maybe give a little more thought to what it is they're asking. So when they ask someone a question or they give a response or whatever it is, they've got a little more quality time to actually, respond and to think through the question they're putting together. In addition to that, how it helps them is if they are having problems getting a hold, to actually get to see someone face-to-face, usually can get to them faster through a technology portal in being able to do that. But a lot of it is a comfort zone. I can ask a question, I can talk about an issue, I can communicate in some way, first of all in a manner that's comfortable for me, because we all are becoming more and more used to the social networks, and in addition to that, it kind of many times loosens those inhibitions of being able to ask questions and because we can't see somebody's body language, so sometimes that can be a real asset in doing that. We talk about this when we talk about distance mentoring with organizations that really, if I don't see somebody's body language, then I feel a little more comfortable that maybe I haven't asked a stupid question or something like that. Kind of breaks down some of those barriers in doing that.
Great, Judy. Sounds great. Now we have time for about 2 more questions. So maybe second to last question for today is we've been discussing about a specific onboarding process and making sure that onboarding isn't, simply an informal and unstructured process. How does mentoring actually help with that? And in general, how do you make sure that you do create the structured and well-planned onboarding process?
The onboarding process needs to be as planned out and as the kinds of things we talked about with your mentoring initiative. We talked. One of the very first questions we had was how do you make sure that your mentoring initiative is what it should be and the organization's ready for it. And what I talked about was making sure that you tie it to business objectives, that you measure results, that you have a process in place that you're rolling out. We're going to say the same thing about your onboarding. That it should be not just a program but a process that you're putting together. That it really is tied to your business objectives. And so then what happens is your mentoring is then tied to if the onboarding is tied to business objectives, then the mentoring is tied to those objectives that the onboarding process is tied to. So you've kind of got a combination there. But I would say it's pretty much the same as what we talked about. You're not ready for onboarding if you're not ready to really look at it seriously, tie it to your business objectives, be able to measure and want to measure, have a desire to measure the results, and really put a plan together and make sure you've got a process of how you're going to roll it out, who's affected, and make sure that the individuals who are a part of your onboarding program that are conveying any kind of information to your new hires all have the same consistent information and are qualified to do so. What I have seen sometimes, unfortunately, in onboarding programs is they'll have a speaker come in, and I actually witnessed this one time, and you just kind of cringe, but they had a guest speaker come in. And the guest speaker just absolutely said the opposite of everything they just touched on about 2 hours earlier in their onboarding and in their orientation program. Because the individual that came in, they weren't prepared. They had different focuses and different opinions on things. The participants and new hires there got inconsistent information right off the bat. So that's what you have to be careful of.
Thanks, Judy. And a great question that recently came in was, how do you evaluate the readiness, skills, and competencies of mentors?
You need to have some assessment specifically. One of the things that we have as an example, we actually created a role profile of what it takes to be a good mentor, and you need to have one of those. You wouldn't ask anybody to take on a job or a role they weren't qualified for, or they didn't really understand what the responsibilities were in taking on that role, what they'd be required to do, the skills that are necessary to carry out that role, and so on. So that's the first thing that you need to do. I mean, as I said, you wouldn't ask anybody to take on a role inside your organization if they didn't understand what was required and they weren't qualified to take it on. So you need to have a role profile of some kind, and then you need to be able to assess if indeed the individual meets that role profile.
Okay, thanks, Judy. And we actually do have time for one more question. Should the mentoring program for onboarding be mandatory for new hires, or should it be presented as additional support?
I'm going to give you a personal opinion on this one. This is kind of a organizational policy issue probably, but in my estimation, it ought to be mandatory. Now, we talked about the fact that not everybody may come in at the same level, because in the very first one that we talked about, we had individuals that were coming in at different levels of expertise, and so I think you need to be ready for that. But I believe that in order to ensure that your new hires get consistent information, that they come in, they've got a good start to their employment history with your organization, that it needs to be mandatory.
Okay, great. And one quick question, back to the measuring of mentor competencies. An attendee asks whether we had a standardized tool to evaluate mentors' competencies.
Yes, we do. And we'll be glad to talk to you further about that. Yes, we do. We do have, as I mentioned, we actually have created a role profile of what it takes to be a good mentor and actually a mentee in doing this. And that role profile includes the kinds of responsibilities and tasks that a mentor or a mentee will actually be performing, and the skills that are necessary to be able. So that we have an assessment process very specifically around those skills, as well as some psychometric assessment. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, and thanks everyone again for submitting some great questions to us. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but we're very happy to actually contact you individually about the questions that you have, as we do have them with us. And Judy, anything else to add?
No, just again, we encourage you to sign up for the next webinar that's going to be on September 29th, and to visit our website at mentoringtalent.com or follow us on Twitter at twitter.com, I'm mentoring. So, and the other thing we'd like for you to do is, as you sign off the webinar, please take a few seconds to complete our attendee survey. It's going to pop up on your screen after the webinar ends, and we thank you for your participation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you all enjoyed the webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.